Great Expectations, a summary and analysis. Charles Dickens published Great Expectations in serial form between 1860 and 1861 in his weekly journal All the Year Round. It later appeared as a full novel in 1861. This was one of Dickens' late works, written when his view of society had grown darker and more psychological. Compared to his earlier novels like Oliver Twist, this one feels more introspective and more personal. At its heart, Great Expectations is a coming-of-age story, but it's also a sharp critique of Victoria's social ambition, class division, and personal identity. It plays out over decades, following the life of one Philip Pirrip, who everyone simply calls Pip. Let's begin at the beginning. Part 1: Childhood and the Marshes. Pip is a young orphan raised by hand, she uses corporal punishment, by his stern and sinister sister, Mrs. Joe Gargery, and her kind-hearted blacksmith husband, Joe. They live in a marsh country village in Kent. Pip's earliest memory is a graveyard. That's where we meet him standing alone among the tombstones of his parents and siblings. Right there, on a misty evening, Pip is terrified by an escaped convict. The man threatens him and demands food and a file to remove his leg iron. Pip brings him both, a decision that haunts and shapes him far more than he realizes. This act of kindness is soon overshadowed by a more emotionally complex experience. Pip is invited to the house of a wealthy, eccentric woman named Miss Havisham. She lives in a decaying mansion, set his house, frozen in time, literally. She still wears her yellowing wedding dress and keeps the rotten remains of her wedding cake on the table. She was abandoned by the groom on her wedding day, and she never moved on. She decides to use Pip as a part of a long revenge plot against men. More importantly, this is where Pip meets Estella. Estella is Miss Havisham's adopted daughter, beautiful, cold, cruel, and Miss Havisham knows it. In bits and pieces, you find it in the novel that Miss Havisham adopted Estella through Mr. Jagger, the lawyer. Pip falls in love with her almost instantly, but Estella is trained to break hearts. That's Miss Havisham's doing, raising a child to exact emotional revenge on the world. Estella tells Pip plainly that she has no heart, and yet he can't stop loving her. This experience opens a wound in Pip, a quiet shame about his social standing. Estella mocks his coarse hands and common speech. From this moment on, Pip becomes deeply aware of class differences, and he begins to hate the forge and everything associated with his simple upbringing. Part 2: A Mysterious Benefactor. One day, everything changes. A lawyer named Miss Jaggers appears and informs Pip that a mysterious benefactor has given him a large fortune and intends to make him a gentleman. Pip assumes wrongly that it is Miss Havisham. After all, she had him over, raised Estella, and is rich. Surely this is her plan. Pip is whisked away to London. There, he is educated, dressed in fine clothes, and slowly groomed into a man of wealth and manners. He meets Herbert Pocket, who becomes his roommate and closest friend. Herbert teaches him how to behave like a gentleman, how to dine, how to fence, how to talk without sounding provincial. But it's not all glamour. London, in Dickens's hands, is no paradise. It's smoky, muddy, and morally grey. Pip finds himself caught between admiration and disgust. He enjoys the privileges of his new status, but he also drifts. He becomes a bit vain, spending more than he should, and loses his connection with Joe, the kind-hearted brother-in-law. In a painful scene, Joe visits him in London, awkward, well-meaning, and completely out of place. Pip is ashamed of him, and later ashamed of himself for being ashamed. All this time, Pip believes his destiny is tied to Estella. He assumes that Miss Havisham is training Estella for him, that eventually the two will be married. But the truth is harsher. Miss Havisham never had such intentions. She was simply using Pip as a plaything in her twisted drama. Then comes the turning point. Part 3: The Return of the Convict. One foggy night, Pip receives a visit from a man who shocks him to his core. It's the convict from the marshes, Abel Magwitch. He is the benefactor. He made his fortune in Australia after Pip helped him years ago, and he has spent years secretly funding Pip's transformation, watching from the shadows. His motive? Gratitude. Pip's small act of kindness on the marsh that day became the foundation of Magwitch's hope. This revelation shatters Pip's illusions. He is horrified. The money that made him a gentleman doesn't come from a lady in satin, but from a convict. A criminal, worse, an uncouth, affectionate, loyal man who now calls Pip his own. Pip, to his credit, undergoes real change here. The story could have ended in bitterness, but it doesn't. Slowly, Pip grows. He begins to care for Magwitch, protects him, helps him hide from the law because Magwitch has returned to England illegally. Pip tries to smuggle him out. It's an act of redemption. By now, Estella is lost to him. She marries a brute named Bentley Drummle, but not out of love, but perhaps as another act of rebellion. Miss Havisham, now racked with guilt, realizes the pain she has caused. She pleads for Pip's forgiveness. Then, in a tragic accident, she is set ablaze by her own dress and dies soon after. The escape plan fails. Magwitch is caught, injured, and sentenced to death. Pip stays by his side in prison. He even discovers that Magwitch is Estella's father, a final twist that adds complexity to her cold beauty. She is the product of passion and crime, not aristocracy. Magwitch dies in prison, but not before Pip tells him that his daughter is alive, beautiful, and that Pip loves her. The end. Fall and rise. After Magwitch's death, Pip's fortunes crumble. He falls ill, burdened by debt, and is nursed back to health by Joe. Joe, ever gentle and forgiving, pays off Pip's debts and leaves without seeking thanks. This part of the novel, Pip's collapse and recovery, is perhaps the most powerful. All his expectations are gone, and yet there is peace. He finds humility. He returns to the forge, reconciles with Joe. Even Biddy, Joe's new wife, welcomes him without bitterness. Joe's first wife, Pip's sister, died years ago after an attacker injures her and leaves her completely paralyzed. Biddy took care of Pip's bedridden sister for many years. Years pass. In the original ending, which Dickens later revised, Pip and Estella meet again in London. She has changed, suffered, been softened by life. Pip has changed too. In the original version, Dickens wrote something like, Pip encounters Estella by chance in London. She is walking with her new husband's child. Estella has changed. She speaks with humility and kindness, a stark contrast to her coldness in the past. Pip sees that she has suffered, and through that suffering, she has learned compassion. The scene ends with this line, I saw no shadow of another parting from her. The sentence has double meaning. They may never part again, or they will never get to part again because they will never meet again. In the revised ending, more hopeful, they meet in the ruins of Setti's house. Estella is a widow. They part hand in hand without any final kiss or confession. Just an unspoken understanding. Perhaps they'll never part again. Or perhaps they will. Dickens leaves it gently open. Dickens slightly changes the sentence. I saw the shadow of no parting from her. It may mean that they may never part again. What is the significance of the title Great Expectations? The title Great Expectations is rich with irony, layers, and shifting meaning. It doesn't just refer to wealth or inheritance. It captures Pip's entire emotional and moral journey. Literal meaning, inheritance and future prospects. I didn't know there was a literal meaning of the phrase Great Expectations until I did some further reading. In Victorian England, the phrase Great Expectations was often used to describe someone who stood to inherit wealth or rise in social standing. When Pip is informed by Mr. Jaggers that he has great expectations, he believes this means he will become a gentleman, he will gain property or title, he may even marry Estella. In this narrow sense, the title refers to Pip's sudden good fortune granted by an unknown benefactor, later revealed to be Magwitch. So if someone was about to become rich and socially successful, he was known to have great expectations. For example, it is whispered that the doctor's son has great expectations from a relative in Poland. Another example, though right now he is a clerk, his greater expectations ensure he is treated with more regard than his station deserves. Emotional meaning, Pip's hopes and illusions. As the story unfolds, the phrase starts to carry emotional weight. Pip's expectations aren't just financial, they are emotional projections. He believes Miss Havisham is grooming him to marry Estella. Money will make him worthy. Being a gentleman means being better than Joe. These are false expectations, and when they collapse, Pip is left hollow and disillusioned. The title then becomes a symbol of the illusions we build, only to see them fall apart. Moral meaning, growth through failure. By the end of the novel, Pip's great expectations are gone. No fortune, no Estella, no status. But ironically, this is when his character truly grows. He learns humility, he reconciles with Joe, he learns to love without expecting return. His expectations have shifted from worldly ambition to inner integrity. So the title also points to a moral transformation. Greatness doesn't come from expectations fulfilled, but from the growth that happens when they aren't. Irony and critique of Victorian values. Dickens was deeply critical of Victorian society's obsession with wealth, titles, and class. Pip's journey shows how expectations based on money and status lead to pride, shame, and spiritual emptiness. In that sense, the title is ironic. The great expectations promised to Pip nearly ruin him. The things that he truly needs, love, loyalty, and self-respect, don't come from any benefactor. So the title Great Expectations works on multiple levels. It names Pip's legal fortune, it reflects his mistaken hopes, it frames his fall and redemption, and it critiques the very society that equates money with worth. By the end, the phrase feels almost tragic. Pip's greatest expectation to become someone worthy is only fulfilled when he lets go of all the things he thought made him great. Main themes in Great Expectations: ambition and self-improvement. At its core, Great Expectations is a novel about ambition, not just economic or social, but emotional and moral. Pip's desire to become a gentleman is driven by a deep longing to better himself. Yet his idea of improvement is flawed. He believes that money, manners, and status will make him worthy, especially in Estella's eyes. Over time, Dickens shows that true self-improvement comes not from wealth, but from self-awareness, humility, and loyalty. Pip's greatest growth happens not in London's drawing rooms, but in the quiet reckonings that follow his disappointments. Social class and mobility. Dickens explores the rigid class structure of Victorian England and exposes its unfairness. Pip is born into the working class and comes to resent it, believing that climbing the social ladder will solve his problems. But as he moves up, he finds that upper class life often lacks warmth, kindness, or honor. Characters like Joe, who remain common, embody deeper human values, while many gentlemen are cruel, shallow, or hypocritical. The novel challenges the idea that class equals character, showing instead that decency often exists outside the bounds of wealth or education. Love and rejection. Unrequited love and emotional manipulation haunt nearly every relationship in the book. Pip's obsessive love for Estella is painful and one-sided. Estella, trained by Miss Havisham to be cold and unfeeling, can't return his affection, not because he chooses not to, but because she was never taught how. Joe's unconditional love for Pip is rejected when Pip becomes ashamed of his roots. The theme reveals that love, when tied to pride or expectation, leads to heartbreak. True love in Great Expectations is quiet, patient, and often overlooked until it's almost lost. Guilt and redemption. Pip spends much of the novel burdened by guilt, for helping the convict, for being ashamed of Joe, for turning his back to his past. Dickens doesn't punish Pip with outward ruin, but makes him face his own conscience. That internal reckoning becomes the moral core of the novel. Redemption comes slowly, not through grand gestures, but through acts of care. Pip nurses the dying Magwitch, apologizes to Joe, and gives up his expectations. Dickens suggests that redemption is always possible, but it requires honesty, humility, and the willingness to change. Parenthood and influence. The novel is filled with broken or substitute parental figures, some nurturing, some toxic. Pip has no biological parents, but is shaped by a mix of guardians: Joe, who models quiet integrity, Miss Havisham, who manipulates, and Magwitch, who gives sacrificially. Estella, too, is a child molded by adults with emotional agendas. Dickens questions what it means to raise someone. Is it about giving money, shaping behavior, or offering love and forgiveness? Through these relationships, the novel explores how adults pass down pain or healing, and how children inherit both. What is the genre of Great Expectations? The genre of Great Expectations is primarily coming of age, the transition from childhood to adulthood, not in terms of age, but in terms of emotions, morals, and psychological maturity. In such novels, the central character goes through a shift in understanding. The novel also includes elements of social criticism, romance, mystery, and even gothic fiction. Coming of age. Such a novel is also called Bildungsroman, which is a German term. This is a dominant genre of Great Expectations. In Great Expectations, we follow Pip from a fearful little boy on the marshes to a disillusioned young man in London and finally to a wiser adult. His journey is marked by internal conflict, shame, longing, guilt, growth, not just external events. We see how he matures emotionally and morally, learning that true worth isn't defined by class, wealth, or love won, but by character and kindness. Social criticism. Dickens uses Pip's story to expose the flaws of Victorian society, its obsession with class, its unfair legal system, and the superficial values of the upper class. Joe, a poor blacksmith, is kind and loyal. Drummle, a rich man, is cruel and arrogant. The contrast is deliberate. Through irony and character choices, Dickens critiques a world that rewards money over morality. This makes the novel part social commentary. Romance. Pip's love for Estella runs through the entire novel. It's unreturned, painful, and idealized. The emotional tension and hope of union, even in the last scene, places the novel in the realm of romantic drama. But unlike typical romance novels, love here is often misguided or tragic, making it more realistic and morally complex. Mystery. There are multiple secrets in the plot. Who is Pip's benefactor? What is Miss Havisham's true motive? What is Estella's parentage? These unknowns create suspense, especially in the middle portion of the novel. Readers, like Pip, are led to assume things that turn out to be false. That misdirection and slow revelation give the novel a subtle mystery layer. Gothic fiction. Miss Havisham's decaying mansion, the foggy marshes, a convict lurking in the dark, a bride in a rotting dress, these are all Gothic elements, eerie, symbolic, and unsettling. Dickens uses these scenes not just for drama, but to reflect psychological states, fear, guilt, heartbreak. The Gothic genre adds emotional depth and atmosphere. So, Great Expectations is not just one thing, it's a coming-of-age novel wrapped in mystery, shaded with Gothic mood, driven by romance, and grounded in social critique. That blend is what makes it a classic. Important characters in Great Expectations. Pip, Philip Pirrip. Pip is the narrator and protagonist of the novel. An orphan raised by his sister and her husband, Pip starts as a humble village boy but becomes consumed by his desire to rise above his social class. His journey is marked by ambition, shame, heartbreak, and eventual moral awakening. Through Pip, Dickens explores themes of identity, self-growth, and the corrupting influence of wealth and social ambition. Pip's greatest strength is not his rise, but his ability to reflect, repent, and grow, making him one of Dickens's most human and complex characters. Estella Havisham. Estella is the beautiful, cold-hearted adopted daughter of Miss Havisham. Raised to break men's hearts, as part of her guardian's twisted revenge, Estella becomes the object of Pip's deep and unyielding love. She is emotionally detached, not by choice, but because she was never taught how to love. Estella's significance lies in her being both a symbol and a victim, a symbol of Pip's romantic illusions and a victim of manipulation. Her eventual suffering and self-awareness parallel Pip's own growth, though hers is more private and painful. Miss Havisham. Miss Havisham is one of the most haunting figures in Victorian literature. Jilted on her wedding day, she freezes time, literally, and lives in her decaying wedding dress, surrounded by dust and rotting cake. She adopts Estella to exact emotional revenge on men. Though grotesque at times, Miss Havisham is not without pathos. She represents emotional stagnation and the dangers of clinging to the past. Her final repentance and tragic death highlights Dickens's recurring theme of wasted life and the cost of bitterness. Joe Gargery. Joe, Pip's brother-in-law, is a blacksmith and the novel's moral anchor. Gentle, kind, and uneducated, Joe is everything Pip later comes to admire but first rejects. Joe's love is unconditional. He never judges Pip, even when Pip grows arrogant and ashamed of him. In the end, Joe quietly forgives, pays Pip's debts, and reminds us that real greatness comes not from education or refinement, but from loyalty and goodness. He stands as Dickens's ideal of true nobility. Abel Magwitch, the convict. Magwitch begins as a terrifying escaped convict on the marshes, but becomes one of the novel's most sympathetic characters. After Pip's childhood act of kindness, Magwitch devotes his life to making Pip a gentleman. As Pip's secret benefactor, he challenges the reader's assumptions about class and morality. Though rough and brutalized by society, Magwitch has a fierce loyalty and deep gratitude. His transformation from criminal to benefactor underscores Dickens's theme that goodness and redemption can come from the most unexpected places. Mr. Jaggers. Jaggers is a powerful and intimidating lawyer who handles Pip's fortune and serves as the link between Pip and Magwitch. Cold, calculating, and deeply private, Jaggers represents the legal and institutional world of Victorian England, sharp, unfeeling, and morally neutral. Yet he is not heartless. His household assistant, Molly, and his concern for Estella's upbringing reveal hidden depths. Jaggers' role is to blur the line between justice and morality, showing how law can serve power as much as principle. Herbert Pocket. Herbert is Pip's best friend and one of the few genuinely kind-hearted characters in the novel. Cheerful, practical, and honorable, Herbert helps Pip navigate life in London and serves as a contrast to Pip's confusion and vanity. He has no great expectations, yet works hard to make an honest living. Herbert's quiet perseverance and friendship symbolize Dickens's belief in character over class. In the end, Pip helps Herbert in return, a gesture that completes Pip's arc of redemption. Biddy. Biddy is a gentle, intelligent girl from Pip's village who eventually marries Joe. She is wise beyond her years, emotionally grounded, and quietly observant. While Pip chases illusions in London, Biddy represents the path not taken, a life of sincerity and emotional balance. Her significance lies in the contrast she provides to Estella. Where Estella is beautiful but distant, Biddy is modest but deeply compassionate. Her eventual marriage to Joe brings peace to both their lives and gives Pip closure. Mrs. Joe Gargery. Mrs. Joe is Pip's much older sister and legal guardian, known throughout the novel simply as Mrs. Joe. Stern, irritable, and quick-tempered, she raises Pip by hand, a phrase that reflects both physical discipline and a lack of tenderness. She often complains about the burden of raising Pip and treats both him and her husband Joe with harshness and impatience. Yet she plays a critical role in shaping Pip's early life, both his sense of guilt and his early understanding of power and class. Her eventual assault, which leaves her disabled and dependent on others, softens her personality somewhat and allows for a quiet reconciliation before her death. While Mrs. Joe is not a warm or likable character, her significance lies in how she represents the emotional hardness and survival instinct of a working-class woman in a rigid and unforgiving society. Why you should read Great Expectations? It's a deeply human story. Pip's journey is emotional, flawed, and full of mistakes, which makes it honest. He loves the wrong person, he is ashamed of the right people, and spends years chasing the wrong dreams. In the end, he grows. That kind of character development feels real and rewarding. It explores timeless themes. Ambition, love, class, guilt, identity. These aren't Victorian problems. They are human problems. Readers today will still ask the same questions. What makes someone truly worthy? Does success bring happiness? What does it mean to grow up? Dickens is a master of character. Miss Havisham in her decaying dress, Magwitch on the misty marshes, Jaggers washing his hands off every moral stain. These characters stay with you. They are not just personalities. They are symbols of regret, revenge, justice, and survival. The writing is rich and layered. Dickens writes with rhythm, wit, and emotional force. His descriptions build entire worlds, from a quiet forge in the marshes to the corrupt sprawl of London. If you love language, there is much to admire. It challenges the reader. Not everything is spelled out. Motives are complex. People are both good and cruel. The book invites reflection. It makes you think not only about Pip, but about your own expectations. Why you might not like reading Great Expectations. The language can feel old-fashioned. Dickens wrote in the 19th century, and it shows. The sentences are long, the tone is formal at times. For modern readers used to short paragraphs and simple prose, this can feel slow and heavy. The plot unfolds gradually. There are no quick thrills here. Dickens builds his story with care, which means Great Expectations demands patience. If you're looking for fast-paced action or constant twists, this may not be the book for you. Pip is not always likable. Pip can be snobbish, selfish, and blind to those who love him. That's the point. He grows. But for some readers, following a main character who frequently makes poor choices can be frustrating. The Victorian context may feel distant. Much of the story revolves around ideas of class, inheritance, and social mobility in Victorian England. If you're not interested in that period or find it hard to relate to its concerns, it may feel irrelevant or overly formal. It requires emotional investment. This isn't light reading. It deals with heartbreak, shame, disappointment, and death. If you are in the mood for something uplifting or entertaining, Great Expectations might feel too heavy. With this, I would like to end my summary and analysis of Great Expectations. I hope you enjoyed it. If yes, please like the video and subscribe to my channel so that you get a notification whenever I upload the next video.